Alrighty, I'm going to try the first practice problem from Chapter 9G2. There are only 3 problems in this set, so I'm going to work the first one, and I'd like to leave you at least a couple to work on your own. But I do want you to see at least one worked fully through. For this one, or I should say for the other 2 in this section, if you have any trouble with them, or for that matter, any trouble in the graded exercises, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me or post on the discussion board or call my office, whatever you prefer, and I'll be happy to help you with those, to give you tips or help you with something you're finding really troublesome in the proof. But let's try this one. This section is about identity, so you know identities that are going to come up in the practice problems. We're told that QB, B is one of the Q things, and then we're told that for all x, if QA, then x does not equal A, right? And then we're told to prove that A does not equal B, that is, it's not identical. I always just say equals or doesn't equal, but it's identity or non-identity. A is not identical to B, right, is my conclusion. And I need to sort of just think this through real quick. I'm told to do this using indirect proof. So indirect proof means I would assume that this conclusion is false. I would assume that A is identical to B, and I think you can see why that's going to create a problem. If A is identical to B, then QA is the same thing as QB, right? But this tells me right here that for any x, if QA, then x does not equal A, right? So if I were to put in, say, B for the x, then I'll get, if QA is true, then B does not equal A. So if I assume that A does equal B, then I'll know what? I'll know that I can substitute A in for B right here, and that'll give me QA. QA will tell me that if I instantiate with B for x here, that once I know that QA, I'll know that B does not equal A, but that's going to be my problem, right? Because I'll have said in my indirect proof, A is identical to B, and I'll get a conclusion that says, no, it's not. So I just need to work through that. Let's start the indirect proof with 3 saying that A is identical to B. Is my assumption for indirect proof, right? And here I just needed to assume that this is directly false. So I just assumed that A is identical to B. Now, identity has many things that you can do with it. It has, you can really just sort of think of it as a few different rules in one. But one rule I can use is I can say, well, if A is identical to B, then I will be able to show that anytime I see a B, I can put an A in there. But if you actually look at the rule, it's going to tell you that if you see a B and you know that B is equal to something else, then you can do that. So I actually want to rewrite this. I'm going to say that B equals A, just so it lines up properly. So this is about B. This tells me I can put in A for B. And again, this is just actually identity. It's one of the things you can do with identity here. 3 id, or identity. It's not the Freudian id, but identity. Then now I can use that fact. I know that Q is true of B. I know that B is equal to A, so I know that Q is true of A, right? That's just, again, 1 and 4 id, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and do that instantiation I mentioned a minute ago, where I want to put B in for x, so I can get that B does not equal A, which is contrary to what I've assumed right here. Or actually not what I assumed, but what I got from my assumption right here. So I can just go ahead and instantiate x there and say if QA, then B does not equal A, just substituting in B, instantiating x with B, right? That's just going to be line 2, universal instantiation. Now, line 7, since I know QA, and I know that QA implies that B does not equal A, I know that B does not equal A. That's just a straightforward modus ponens from 5 and 6. Right, modus ponens there. And now I have a contradiction, right? I don't need to flip this around. I could do that and contradict or get the contradiction using line 3, but I have B does not equal A, I have B equals A, so I just need to conjoin those to get the full contradictory statement. right? It doesn't really matter which order you go in, but I'm just going to say B is identical to A, and B is not identical to A. I could have said those in reverse, but it doesn't matter. And so that is just line 4 and line 7 by conjunction. And that's obviously a contradiction. I'm saying this thing is true and not true, right? And that gives me my conclusion. My indirect proof is, that part of it's now over. I can move back over and I can say, oh, that assumption just did not work out. It led to a contradiction. So that assumption must be false, which means A is not identical to B. And that is lines 3 through 8. Lines 3 through 8. Indirect proof. All right, there's the whole thing. Let's just see if we can get it all in there. All right, so there you go.